right, I think for the sake of time, we can go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. If you're here to learn more about the Master of Science program in engineering, you're in the right place. So we've got a lot of great information to share. We're going to talk a lot about specifically electrical and computer engineering tonight, but we'll also talk more broadly about the School of Engineering programs. We'll kick off with some introductions. My name is Victoria Bray. I'm the Associate Director of Recruitment. I work in the Division of Masters and Professional Programs, and I work with our prospective students and applicants on this in the School of Engineering through the application process. Ted, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, and I'm Ted Tracy. I am the program director for the ECE Masters Group. That's what you guys are. And I'm also a member on the engineering faculty, and I teach two of the ECE classes, which we'll talk about as well.
All right, awesome. So, we're going to be here for 45 minutes for the presentation portion. We'll talk about the master's program structure, the program curriculum. We'll talk about Brown. We've got a lot of really specific things for our master's students at Brown University, and then we'll talk about the application process. If you want to submit any questions you have through the Q&A, you're more than welcome to. We'll answer those questions throughout the session, but then we will certainly save some time at the end to answer questions that come up. So with that being said, I will hand things over to Ted to talk more.
So just a little more specifically about my role. I am a program director and I'm also an advisor for the masters. And so since we're going to talk about how we offer a lot of flexibility in terms of how you design your curriculum, you often talk to advisors like myself and Nora in the case of the ECE to pick the classes that make the most sense for your goals. And I have counterparts throughout the organization in the different master's programs that we have that do similar functions as well. And as an example, we've highlighted those in red. But I worry about your ECE design of your master's program and what classes make sense for what you're trying to achieve. Next slide, please. I think that is your slide, Victoria.
Yep. So we're going to talk a lot about support for master students on this call and just want to talk about specifically in the School of Engineering. We have a lot of folks who are here to help. We have student affairs staff, folks who are here to help connect you with vital Brown resources. So those layers of support really start within your department. You can see a lot of the people on the screen. You've probably talked to them if you're a prospective student already. We have people in the School of Engineering really there to service you through the application process. So if you have questions about which engineering program might be the best fit for you, you need to be connected with folks within the department. These people are really the ones behind the scenes answering questions, helping you. And then once you get to campus, also a resource for you. We've got Anne on the call too. She's the one answering questions in the Q&A with me. So yeah, just some folks to introduce you to whom you might be interacting with as you move through the application process and once you get to campus.
Right. So I think this is where I kick in.
Yes.
So this is our beautiful home, which is now in its seventh year. And we call it the ERC facility, Engineering Research Center. Nice brand new building, lots of new space, lots of lab space that allows us to do our research activities. But you notice on the front of the lawn, we have this infinity symbol, which is symbolic for our program because we believe our program is very flexible and gives the student, the grad student specifically, a lot of possibilities or infinite possibilities to design their own graduate studies. So that symbol comes up in many of the themes of the curriculum that we're trying to offer. Next slide. And I really think that a little more expanded in terms of what those infinite possibilities are is you're going to take roughly 8 classes to get your master's degree. It depends a little bit if you're doing the research track or not. But you have a lot of flexibility about what those are. We offer guidelines, based on the concentration within ECE that you want to get to, whether it's communications or chip design or IC fabrication. Those all will have different templates of classes, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So you have a lot of flexibility, and we give you those choices. So that part of it is infinitely flexible. Next slide, next bullet. And there's a lot of cutting edge activity going on around the campus, both in the School of Engineering, but also in different departments. It could be for the med school, for example. And we do encourage that type of cross-departmental collaboration. So part of the infinite possibility theme is that you can apply what you're learning in electrical engineering or computer engineering and apply it to a totally different field like medicine. And so we do encourage that type of collaboration between groups, especially at the research level. And we do offer that at the master's level as well. Please. Next bullet. And I think you'll find that we have a very comfortable ratio of students like yourselves and faculty members like myself. So basically, I'm on a first name basis with everybody in my class. And certainly that's the case within a research lab or a research group. So we have a good scale of you, the student, who's looking to learn from a lot of different people in the very approachable faculty that we have. And the last one. And then if you just look at the environment, Rhode Island is a very unique state. It's very unique in different ways. It has a long, rich colonial history. It's a city, but it's not too big a city. It's colonial, but it's a city at times. You get a lot of different things, a lot of different parts of the environment and culture that you pick up on. And if you're really urged to go to a larger city like a Boston or New York, it's relatively convenient to get to either of those places. And we have great transportation systems to allow that. But I think as we get into Victoria's section later in the deck, we'll show you why Brown is surrounded by a very unique culture within Rhode Island, and that makes your experience in Brown that much more effective. And I think, from my view, and I've been involved with Brown for a very long time. I'm a Brown graduate. I come from a family of six Brown graduates. I have two of my children actually went to Brown. I've known it for a long time. And when I look at it, this is a really great time to be attending Brown at the graduate level. And you may think that's not the case because, in general, the EDU space is a little bit unclear with funding and such. But if you look at it from a longer term perspective, we're doing a lot of things in the program that make it a very attractive time to join. We're hiring for scale. We're bringing in leadership that's going to allow us to grow the department. We're bringing on new faculty members, as I'm going to show, that's going to allow us to bring in new research and have new energy, if you will, to actually expand some of the programs. We're doing collaborative programs with other schools like RISD, for example, that if your thing is really to do engineering and design, we have a program for that. And we are innovating in terms of new types of tracks that you can take. We'll talk about this. Sure, we could take 8 classes and be done with it, but we're also offering programs for you to do research, and we're also offering programs for you to do cooperative internships with industry partners of ours. So we have a lot of flexibility, and that's all being innovated as we speak now. And lastly, but certainly not the least important, it's probably the most important, we continue to have a fantastic set of students, both at the undergraduate and the graduate levels. And the timing to meet with those people and get in there is really a great timing. So we feel if you put all those factors together, it's really a unique time in Brown's approach to actually offer you a very world-class and different experience. Next bullet. And just to put some numbers to it, we have roughly about 430 graduate students mixed across a variety of different disciplines, but also degrees. And so you can see the numbers for yourself. And when we look at masters, we're looking to bring on something between like 150 or 200 master's students across all the different concentrations in each academic year. And you see that we have a very healthy representation of male to female ratio or different minorities represented in the mix or international students. So you're going to find us to be a very, very cosmopolitan and global type of mix of cultures and backgrounds and things that you can learn from as well. Next slide, please. And more tactically or specifically, we have 6 different doctoral programs in any of the classic concentrations. I represent electrical and computer engineering, but we, of course, have chemical engineering or fluids or material science. So that would be on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, we have even more flexible programs. We have 11 different concentrations for masters. Again, I'm representing electrical and computer engineering, but I'll tell you honestly that there's a high amount of collaboration with these other disciplines as well. So whether it's mechanical engineering and electrical engineering, a lot of my students that are in my class are actually coming from the mechanical engineering side because they're trying to learn enough about electronics to allow them to build their robots or allow them to do their instrumentation for their research, for example. And at the bottom of the list, we're excited about a new program called the Sustainable Energy Program, which is very unique in the world. There's not many of those just yet. And we're making an investment. This is an area that Brown wants to be very different about. And we believe that we have all the ingredients to really build a world-class program in that area as well. And I'll tell you about that as we go. And as I mentioned, the timing is good because we have made the investments. We made those investments about a year ago. We brought on 5 new faculty members, and they're all from different areas, bringing in additional opportunities for us, both as researchers as well as teachers for our students. And they are grounded in the more recent technologies. So we're going to talk a little bit about Pepe and Mede, and they're bringing in cloud computing and VLSI chip design, for example. And those are very, very topical in light of all the work that's going on in machine learning and artificial intelligence. And we're very strong in biosciences as well, bioelectrical sciences, and we have Leo joining us in that particular discipline. So the timing is very good. You can read about this, that we have made investments, and now those guys are getting comfortable with their own labs and they're teaching their own classes, and we're getting a real explosion of new technology, new opportunities as well. Next slide. Now, about the program itself, there's three different tracks, as we call it, that you can choose from. If you were motivated just to get a completely academic, scholarly orientation of up to 8 new topic areas, 8 new classes, you were in a different space and industry and you wanted to go get refresh and to go into some new areas, like maybe you want to know about robotics or maybe you want to know about machine learning, then you could come and take the scholarly track. And then that's pretty mechanical. You can be out in 1.5 years. It will be 8 classes, and based on what your concentration preference would be, would tell you the template of classes that you could choose from. Now, if you weren't so sure about where you're going after your master's and you thought maybe you're going to be an academic and actually want to do world-class research, then you would want to go the research track where those 8 classes are some are in the classroom actually doing academic work, but some are also doing research in the lab and hopefully somebody, a PI that you've met with that's going to sponsor you for that type of research. And you get class credit for those research semesters that you have as well. And you would do that path if you think your long-term career goal is to get deeper into a PhD program or to do some type of industry-based research. And then the third program, which is new for us, but it's something I'm committed to and I'm working on closely, is to find opportunities for people that are getting their master's degrees, but they get to supplement that by working for one of our industry partners. And so we call this not just an internship, we call this a co-op because it's a more serious engagement between yourself, who's going to be spending up to 6 months with a company, and that company is making a commitment to you to have you employed for 6 months. They really can evaluate you more effectively that way. They certainly will pay you as you work in that time period. So this is a really good way to get yourself entered into the US market. And hopefully with partners that have a good relationship with Brown and they come back and bring more and more opportunities to us over time. So 3 tracks: scholarly track, it's mostly in the classroom. Research track, it's a mix of that in the research lab. And then the professional track is it's a mix of classroom and the opportunity to work in industry. So let's talk about some of the courses that we offer. Next slide, please. And some of these are the newer things that we're doing. I mentioned that Pepe Zhao has now joined us on the faculty. I was in a meeting with her today, and she was talking about a new series of professors that are coming in to talk about cloud computing. So, we're really growing this emphasis right now because it's such a pervasive theme with AI and machine learning going on. But what Pepe teaches is how we actually could take resources and abstract those in a cloud to give you the compute power that you need or the technical functionality that you may need. So if you need a farm of FPGAs for an analysis that you're trying to do or some kind of, complicated equation you're trying to solve, we have the ability to have FPGAs that are customizable in the cloud control, and you use them as you need them. And then when you're done with that analysis, then you can actually dispense of them. But we also do that for CPUs and GPUs, and that's very topical right now in light of the fact that everybody in the world is trying to build a bigger, faster machine learning type machine. And so this is the part of her research, and that she's got many years of grad student time being put into this area and something that she's teaching in the classroom as well. Next slide. And I mentioned that Mehdi, he's just joined us this semester, but he is a world-renowned architect of chips, ICs, systems on a chip, very complete, dense technology at the VLSI level. And he's working with his first set of students to allow them to build some kind of sophisticated computing machine or computing engine. And I think in this case, he has a smart memory chip that he's developing in this particular semester. And as this project usually goes, different members of the team or in the class actually would take different modules, and those teams will collaborate together to build the final chip or the final die. They've now just done the design, they've done the so-called tape out phase, and now they're getting ready to fabricate this chip in the second semester as an example. So this is a wonderful set of skills to learn to go back into industry with and learn how he can do high level, high density, high functionality systems on a chip type design. And some of the more traditional areas that we would have, like fluids engineering or fluid mechanic, those are all at Brown, and you can study that for sure. But we are, of course, in our usual way, are a little bit creative about some of this. So what we noticed as we were teaching this class is that you have this beautiful set of artwork that comes about from some of the side effects that you have with the different physical phenomena that's being represented. You can see some of these pictures. So this particular class is a mix of both the fluids engineering part, but also just the beauty of how we actually capture those images to the extent that we actually turn this into an art gallery that's in the lobby of our ERC building. So this is something that always draws somebody's attention as they walk through the building. And someone just had the creative idea is, man, this just alone, the imagery is very potent. And so what we're trying to show that, sure, we're doing the fluids engineering, but here's another byproduct that we got from doing from that type of research. So that's a typical example where we may do something a little different than the rest of the world may see things. Please, next slide, please. And then this area, not so splashy, it doesn't really have the artistry to it, but the optical microscopy class that Kamani teaches, and Kamani's a dean of the school and very experienced researcher, is a good example where there's a lot of collaboration going on between different departments, whether it's the optical microscopy is a byproduct of the physics of optics, the sense of biology and why you would apply this to looking at cell organisms, for example, the waves and the electrical engineering part of it as well. So this is kind of a hybrid of all that technology, and we're learning how to put it to use in a very relevant and interesting recent technology called optical microscopy. So you'll learn the application of these technologies and what you can do with them. And it's a fascinating type topic for you to learn from. Next slide, please. Now, this is my class, and I've been working on a 5-year commitment to convert our microwave engineering class into a more recent radio engineering class. I think it's kind of obvious to people that probably the most pervasive communications device in the world is the phone, the iPhone. And the iPhone is a wonderful example of technology that runs at gigahertz speeds, has subversively put its antenna function and its high-speed communications out of the way of the user so they don't even know that they're actually using it. But it's a wonderful example of technology that is really radio engineering in the 2025 time. And so what I do in the class is we start early on with a foundation of usually the Maxwell's equations and the wave equations associated with gigahertz transmission. But then quickly we move through those basics and say, what can we do with this? So we start talking about things like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and mobile communications and even satellite communications, because we believe that is the future. And so what we're trying to do is constantly talk about, sure, the classical equations, but how do we apply it to some of the new recent technologies that you use every day and are absolutely critical? To be honest with the group, we just had an outage of Wi-Fi in our building for the course of the last day. It's been kind of intermittent, and everybody is frantic because it is such an important tool that we have now that the world couldn't live without Wi-Fi. And that's only happening because we're doing things like applying radio engineering as I've described here. Next slide. And then another class that I'm involved with, and this isn't really all about the classes I teach, but I think these are good examples. We actually allow students to do a embedded microprocessor system design class. So we have a class this year of 33 people. That's the all-time high that we've had. These are all typically ECE students, and they're both undergraduates and graduates. And they want to design some kind of product. You know, they've always had some interest in developing a sensor or a way to measure the health of their plants that are in their dorm room. Or, you know, in one case, we have a cocktail dispenser that we've actually used. And in another case, people are wearing a safety helmet light indicator for their bike. Whatever the reasons are, we don't really question that. We just help the students figure out how to go build a microprocessor-based design to build that function. And then we work through the process of taking it from paper and actually building it in a fabricated printed circuit board technology, and then we work with them to put that in an actual mechanical package, and it has a user interface to it. And so at the end of the course, we expect the users to have built a prototype that actually is a working live example of an embedded system that's using a microprocessor. So we're very hands-on, and I can promise you that the skills that people learn in this class are immediately relevant to their working opportunities. In fact, many students come to me and say, that when they go into their job interviews, they're bringing their prototype with them and they're talking exactly about it and why they were excited about it. Next class. Next. And then it isn't all about tech. You know, we have a wonderful sense of entrepreneurism on the campus as well. And so we have the Nelson School, which is a formal kind of technical management business school, mini business school. And we have people that come lecture and teach us different aspects. And this is one that Professor Banu teaches all about organizational leadership. Yeah, at some point, you may leave Brown and go to work in a large company, and we train you how to navigate that type of environment and how to make your projects be successful and how to make you successful as a leader in that organization. And it isn't all about the tech in your master's program. We want you to take one or two classes that are going to develop your softer skills. And this is a very popular class that many of the students would take. And it turns out that many of the master's students want to do something entrepreneurial. They want to start a company or take their product concept and build a company around it. So this can be very timely for you to kind of get that type of training and different perspectives that you need to do something like create a company. And so now you get into the question of, okay, you have a lot of flexibility of classes. So one of the questions is, do you want to go broad or do you want to go deep in any one area? And so that really brings in the question of whether you want to do a thesis or you want to pursue a non-thesis option. And so we do offer both. And if you were to do a thesis, then typically what would happen is you may find an area of interest that you may have taken your first set of classes in your first semester on campus. It was about optical microscopy. You took Kamani's class. You were really motivated by that. So you go talk to Professor Kamani after class and you ask him if it's okay for you to be part of the lab, and they ask him to be a PI or principal investigator for you, a sponsor for you. And if you really wanted to go deeper in that field, then that's how the path usually works. It depends, obviously, based on how much grant money we have in those areas, but that's a way that you can get into research if that's what you really want to do in the long run. So if you want to do research, then you typically would encourage you to take a thesis path as well. If you don't want to do the thesis and you just want to have a broader set of classes, then we go non-thesis option, in which case you could graduate more quickly and you'd be pretty much focused on spending your time in classroom learning new materials from the textbook and from the instructors as well. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some of those possibilities. And so here's a good example. This is about fluid mechanics and fluids, the study of fluids. It's very computationally intensive. It's very mathematical. So we have professors in the lower right that are very focused on the mathematics behind fluids and modeling of that. But we also do slightly different kinds of research. Like, we look at the science of fluids, but we're looking at how it erodes the coastline that we have so much of here in Rhode Island. So it's kind of applied that, or it may be something like, how does a vessel actually transfer from being on a surface of the ocean to how it goes submerge itself underwater, because we have such autonomous navigation underwater right now, and there's a lot of research going on in our Newport and Portsmouth type areas where people are looking at, for defense purposes and otherwise, to have navigation underwater. And so there's a whole set of fluids and thermal sciences that are involved with that. And so we try to apply that, is what I'm saying. It's a very computationally intensive, but it's something that can be applied to new problems that the world hasn't solved yet. Next slide. An example of that is Anoop, who is a wonderful friend of our program, was a master's student, now is a PhD program, and his day job, if you will, is to learn about fluids and thermal sciences. Now, it turns out that he's doing PhD research to show that those problems related to fluid sciences are not very different than what drones do when they fly through space. And so he's trying to use some of the modeling that he's learning in the day job with his night job when he's studying how drones would work. And so this is a good example where we're actually collaborating across different departments, the traditional engineering department of fluid science, but he's also collaborating with people in the computer science group that are working on the drone research. So this is a really good example and a friend of the program that shows how he's going very deep in a very highly collaborative area. Next slide. And biomedical engineering is probably our biggest concentration. I think that is the biggest concentration we have at the undergraduate level. And this has been a many decade growth path for us and tremendous interest, maybe because of heightened sensitivity about the health services in general, or the ways that people are applying their different technology to solving health problems. Because of the miniaturization of electronics, we're able to do things like put sensors into the people's brains, for example, in different parts of their bodies. So there's just a lot of new parts of the world to improve health services that we can do with the electrical and computer engineering that we have at our disposal. You can see, measured in many orders of magnitude, how much growth we've had in this area for many inventions. So this is a hot area for us, probably our most popular and a really good area that you can collaborate with different groups, such as the med school and in the biosciences as well. And an example of that is we have a program called Breath, which is targeted for research to be done specifically by master's students, which is a little unusual. And it's a whole program of all those different contributors to health sciences, health services, and what we can do with technology to improve our digital health offering, which is a hot topic in Rhode Island because we're trying to use digital health to improve our health care for our citizens. So this is an area of vast research. Again, Kamani Toussaint is the leader of this group with a couple other faculty members. And we're doing a lot of different work from just basic cloud computing to some of the microscopy areas that I mentioned before, electronics. There's a lot of different research going on here. So this is kind of a vibrant area, and it's kind of earmarked specifically for master's students as opposed to long-term PhD groups that we have. Next slide, please. And then the tried and true to electrical engineering, we've had research in photonics and new energy systems, which has now spawned a new program for us. IC design, semiconductor technology, a lot to do with energy systems, a lot to do with computer architecture. So, we have a long list of areas that we've had different levels of research in. A lot is also in the bioengineering and biosciences as well. And so you name it, we have it. If there's a particular type of research that you'd like to do when you came to Brown, I'd be more than happy to direct you to the right professors that can help you in those particular areas. Next slide. And then if you're into design, this is where I mentioned that another feature of the school is that we have collaborations with RISD, Rhode Island School of Design. We have collaborations with Harvard. And you may want to be doing something that's a little more applied across those different universities. And we have ways to do that. So this particular program MADE allows you to take an engineering degree and a design focus to build a very unique program. It starts at a little different timing. I believe it starts in the summer. I'm not sure about that, but it's not quite the same timing as our traditional classes. But you can get a good pollination between the RISD curriculum and what we have at Brown to really have a degree that's really focused on design, which is a very hot topic in the tech world today. So you may want to look into that type of program if you're interested in design. Next slide, please. I mentioned that we have sustainable energy. So this is a very important area for the world. We have to get out of the fossil fuel trap that we're in. There's solar, there's wind farms, there's different ways to generate power for society and store that and to market that. And so this class is just coming together. This concentration it's an intense 1 year program, mostly about engineering systems and the technology behind that. But we also have a couple of class slots that are open to learn about the policy and how we manage that type of energy system as well. So that's going to be important about how we administer and offer this to the world over time and influence governments, understand how governments are looking at this to allow us to really take the technology and solve a real important problem for mankind. Next slide, please. And then I mentioned that we go into a co-op program as well. This is something I'm really big on because I believe you get your master's degree and in a really good path is go back into industry. And one way to kind of ease into that world and understand it more effectively is to do a co-op or an extended internship. So we have a great program. We're recruiting partners that are very friendly to Brown and can deploy our graduates into those programs and have them do really serious projects. So if you go to the next slide, please. One good example is Will Wu. He did robotics to get his master's degree, but part of that was to go work for Amazon. And when he worked for Amazon, he worked on the Proteus project, which is Amazon's internal use of their robotic system on a manufacturing floor environment. So he went to work for a world-class company using cutting-edge technology, and he applied everything that he had learned in the classroom. Now, oddly enough, after doing that internship or that co-op, he came back to Brown, and now he's going deep into drone and robotics, and he's going to actually be getting his PhD at some point. So, there's a guy that's kind of had a lot of experience in the real world that makes it really relevant about why he wants to become an expert in this particular area. So that's one of the side effects that we have with the co-op. Next slide. And, this gets all pretty complicated. I've gone through, just classroom stuff, research stuff, 3 different tracks, thesis, no thesis. So what we do in each of our concentrations is we map all that out into our handbooks. And so this is what I show on the screen here. It's going to be the handbook for ECE candidates. And I personally got involved with designing the different templates about if your focus is in signal processing or in communications, here's a good set of classes that you should be looking at. If you're interested in biomed or medical engineering or medical imaging, then these would be a good set of classes to look at. And so we try to get this all up to date with the new professors coming in with the new curriculums and trying to make sure that you have a starting point to look at is how you can design your program, because we think it's really important for you to design that program. but we want to make sure you're choosing classes that make the most sense for, where we're invested as a university and where we have a lot of potential. Next slide. And of course, we want to be friendly to any veterans that are involved defending us. Thank you for your service. We're very friendly to those opportunities. Some of our best students are guys or gals that have worked in the services and they want to come back and restart their educational path. We have lots of possibilities there. So if that's somebody in the group, feel free to reach out to us. We have a wonderful set of benefits to offer to allow people to make that transition. And this is my last slide. And the point I try to make here is that you really can't go wrong with this investment to get your master's at a place like Brown because of our flexibility. So whether it's you want to go back into industry and do research, we have great partnerships, a lot of great companies that can allow you they'll see the Brown degree. They know that it's serious stuff and that you're really qualified well. But at the same time, if you wanted to use Brown Masters as a stepping stone to move on to a strong PhD program, we have many, many examples of students going on to these great schools that you show at the bottom of the slide. So you kind of can't lose either way. Either outcome is pretty good. You can either get into a deeper academic program because we give you a very world-class background, or we allow you to get into the industry, hopefully with our partnerships that allow you to really work for a top-notch company and that company really understands and respects the master degree that you've achieved at Brown. That's it. I'd be more than happy to answer questions as they come through the chat or at the end of the session.
All right, thanks, Ted. So we're going to talk more about Brown University more broadly. So, like Ted was saying earlier, Brown is in Providence, Rhode Island, small city in New England. We're really well situated in the Northeast between and among a lot of major cities, really easily accessible to Boston, just an hour away. Um, on the train, a couple of hours to New York on the train, or you can drive, of course. Train's probably the more recommended route to go there. Providence is a great city if you like art and culture. We have a lot of great concert venues, theater. If you're a Brown student, you get free entrance into the Rhode Island School of Design museums. A lot of history in the area as well. We're a really old city, so there's a lot of really great architecture. If you're interested in the outdoors, we are the ocean state, so really easy to get to the ocean. There's a lot of bike paths, pedestrian footpaths. There's Burlingame State Park, so a ton to do really outside of the classroom if you want to get out into Rhode Island a little bit more. I want to talk a little bit about the neighborhoods in Providence so you can get a sense of where our students are living and where they're recreating outside of the classroom. So the vast majority of your classes, if you're in the School of Engineering, are going to be on College Hill. You can see the little areas with the hearts over them. College Hill is where the School of Engineering, that the building that Ted showed earlier on his slides, that's where that is. But our Brown University has a wider footprint beyond College Hill, and a lot of our master's students live in downtown in the Jewelry District. That's where we have our graduate student housing. We have apartment buildings that our students can get on the wait list for after they're enrolled. So we have free ridership on the Rhode Island Public Transit Authority buses as well. So easy to get around. This map makes us look, a lot bigger than we are in Providence, separated into neighborhoods like this, but easy to get around. You don't necessarily need a car unless you're living outside of Providence potentially, which some of our students do choose to do. But I'd say the vast majority are living in Fox Point, downtown in the Jewelry District, and then in College Hill. We also have Brown shuttles that run anywhere that Brown has a footprint. Brown University shuttles will take you around. So if you're living in our graduate student housing in downtown, the shuttle ride, it happens all the time. But it really is just like a 15-minute walk from the housing up to College Hill. We have centers and offices on campus that serve our students. The home for our master students is the Center for Master Student Excellence. So the Center for Master Student Excellence is, makes us unique in the landscape of master's programs because we really have dedicated resources for our master's students. A lot of institutions sort of have general resources for all of their students. Here, we recognize, you're only with us for 2 years for an engineering master's degree. You really need to hit the ground running when you're on campus. Career networking, professional development, and then all of those things. So it's really important for us to connect you with those vital resources early on. We partner with a lot of the centers and offices that you see on your screen here to make sure that our students have what they need while they're with us. Student health and wellness services, all of our students have health insurance, but then also doctor's appointments, things like that. Sheridan Center for Teaching and Learning has writing center as well as tutoring and English language bridge programs. So really a lot in the way of service for our students. And then I want to talk specifically about career support and professional development because for our master students, we have these kind of layers of support that I was talking about earlier. So your program and your department, excellent resource. Ted talked at length about the co-op program that's offered through the School of Engineering. That's a great example of some of the support that you get while you're at Brown. The Division of Masters and Professional Programs, though, we have dedicated career counselors. We have STEM specific career counseling as well, and they're here to work with you on things like resume, cover letter writing, all the way through to when you're negotiating a salary to make sure that you're negotiating a fair salary. We're also at Brown, we're lucky enough to have a really great alumni base. So we're also here to connect you with alumni to help network that way as well. Beyond the Division of Master's programs, there's the Center for Career Exploration as well. There's recruiting events, career fairs put on by the Center for Career Exploration. We use Handshake, so we have a lot of opportunities that get posted through Handshake. So let's talk through the application requirements and process. So this is a high-level overview of what you're going to be required to submit as a part of your School of Engineering application. Your unofficial transcripts, which should come from anywhere that you've attended after secondary school or high school. So if you have multiple bachelor's degrees, you've attended multiple institutions, we're going to want to see all of those transcripts. Your unofficial transcripts are fine for the purposes of reviewing your application. We won't need official transcripts until the point where you end up enrolling at Brown. So we also are going to have your CV or resume, which will outline your research, your work experience, your education skills, your personal statement. Your personal statement is one of the only opportunities you have to communicate directly with the admission committee. And I should say also, the folks who are reading your application are folks in the School of Engineering, faculty in the School of Engineering. So that's the audience for your application. So you should really be talking about your specific goals, what you want to do while you're in your master's program, and what you want to do when you graduate. Do you want to go on to a PhD? What does that look like? Do you want to go into industry? Do you have specific goals? We really want to hear about that so we can sort of picture you and how we can help you with that through our program. Really focus also on having a highly polished professional document. It's the opportunity for you to be able to communicate professionally. So make sure it's proofread and you spend a lot of time with it. Uh, some of our programs also have short answer questions. It'll sort of depend on which program you're looking at. Just make sure that you're answering any specific short answer questions based off of the prompt. Some of our programs are also going to require a video essay, which is just a in real time response to a prompt on a screen through the application. Letters of recommendation, we require 3 letters of recommendation. We require all 3 letters of recommendation in order for your application to be considered complete. So keep that in mind. You should really be asking folks who know you really well, who can speak to you as a member of a classroom community, as a learner, and can talk to us about sort of how successful you'll be in one of our graduate programs. For applicants whose native language isn't English, will require you to submit English language proficiency exam scores. The only way you can satisfy that requirement is through the TOEFL or the IELTS. If you have or will have a degree from an institution where the sole language of instruction is English, you do not have to submit the TOEFL or the IELTS. And then we don't require the GRE. Just walking through sort of the deadlines for all the programs that we've talked about on the call. The priority deadline is February 1st. Probably doesn't feel like that's right around the corner, but it definitely is, especially if you're looking to get things like letters of recommendation together. That if you apply by that priority deadline, then you'll receive your decision early. If you are admitted, you'll be able to enroll early and you'll get access to Brown specific things early. So things like your Brown email address, which will allow you to get on housing wait lists. And also, if you're an international student, it'll also help you kickstart that visa process earlier. So there are a lot of benefits to applying by that priority deadline. That being said, you have until for some of our programs, April 1st or April 15th to apply as your final deadline. Keep in mind that you have up until 2 weeks after the deadline to be considered to have all of your materials and to be considered. So if you have your materials in 2 weeks after February 1st, but you submit that application by February 1st, we'll still consider you a priority candidate. And then if you submit your application by that final deadline, you have up until 2 weeks after that final deadline to submit any additional materials like a letter of recommendation. So now, here's some social media handles from the School of Engineering. If you want to get sort of a sense of what's going on in the School of Engineering, what students are doing, talks that are happening, I definitely encourage you to check that out. It's a great way to get a sense of what's going on campus. You can also check out events at Brown, which if you want to get a sense of sort of what events we're hosting, speakers that come through, social events, it's really important to us that, our students are socializing outside of their programs, through different events. So definitely check out events at Brown as well. And then if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. I'll put my email address in the chat directly so you can reach out to me. But then also, if you have any questions about the application process, you're welcome to reach out to the master's admission office.
Yeah, I'll put my email address in the chat as well, if that helps.
Awesome. So if folks want to start to put some questions in the Q&A, I'm gonna pull open the questions that were asked in advance of the session while we're waiting.
I answered a few questions that came up.
Oh, awesome. Um, One question was if folks can apply for more than one program. Yes, you can apply to a maximum of three programs, even three programs in the School of Engineering if you want to, but you can't apply for more than three.
I think there's a question there about the timing of the PhD program.
Yeah, so it's somebody who the PhD application is passed, but I'm not really sure how those two things are connected though. The PhD application deadline passing
Well, I know
and the
firsthand
personal
because
statement.
I was in a faculty meeting today that was talking about the deadlines for PhD. If you have something that's, legitimate application and interest and you've already had it, but you just missed by a day or two, we can get through that pretty quickly. And I could tell you who to address that application to. But the theme is that we're going to move very quickly through the PhD applications because in a competitive sense, we want to get to the best candidates as soon as possible. So the deadline was December 1st, like most schools. But I think for us, we have a heightened sense of trying to move quickly. Now, if you really have something innovative in the world of new energy systems, we are starting up a new department. So there may be a way to get you to the top of the list if you can get it to us quickly. But if you come back in 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to be too late.
All right. We've covered all the other questions it looks like that got submitted in advance and during the session. Oop, somebody's got another one. Oh, that's a thanks to you, Ted. All right, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And thank you, Ted, for the great presentation and for answering questions in the background and keeping everybody on board. That being said, I think we're ready to say bye to everybody. Have a great rest of your night.
Okay, guys, thank you.